there across the social media platforms. Now, I know that a lot of you have been used to seeing me like every week, but my confession is that those things that you've been seeing over the last several weeks have been pre recorded. So to me, it feels like I'm kind of coming back online, like in a real live form, so to speak. So, hello, everybody. I know this is probably unexpected for a lot of you. So, don't worry. I'm going to keep up the replay. I do feel like I said, it's been a minute for me coming back online and whatnot, but I'm really happy to be on and just getting right into it. Enough of the small talk, right? I wanted to just address a question that was asked during this past Speak Life. And those of you who may not know who I am, or you're just watching and you're like, oh, who's that? I am Cesare, aka the Pretty Producer, aka the Singing Scholar, and I usually do a weekly Speak Life every Thursday evening so that I can spread encouragement. We talk about real life topics from a down to earth perspective. And so when I was talking the other day on Thursday, we were talking a little bit about like faith and, living real life. Because a lot of times we see that online is like this really beautiful, perfect 24/7 kind of world where everything is just great and people are just looking a certain way. They're portraying this, they're pretending that they're this or that, etc. And the list goes on, right? But there's a real lesson behind the scenes offline where we're living real life. We have real lessons to go through. We have real things to experience, and etc. So I wanted to show you guys the question. I'm going to see if I can copy and paste it here, and we're just going to talk a little bit about it. So, give me one second. Okay, so there it is. Maybe, hopefully, you guys will be able to see it. But the question is, where did you get your bold faith and adventurous spirit from? Was it always there, or did it develop as you grew? And how much of a role did your mother in New York play in it? So, a lot of you might know already, I'm originally from New York City. And so, part of the discussion I was having when it comes about like faith, right, is that sometimes, you will find yourself kind of leaving an old environment, leaving something that was so familiar to you, and then you're going into something new. And oftentimes that takes a lot of courage, it takes a lot of boldness, it takes a lot of, response to opposition. Sometimes people are just not okay with you just suddenly doing something. And I just also want to place emphasis on when I come off as making like a bold move or a risk or something like that, I will be honest, that is a part of just the natural personality that I have. But I also am very aware that if I do something, it's got to be spirit led by the Holy Spirit, because, just kind of doing something just out of the blue or just because, that can yield to consequences. And so when I say that I'm being led, because some people may not understand what that means, is that if there is something that I have like honestly prayed about, something that I have like truthfully contemplated about, and I have a peace about it, and there is a green light, there are signs for me to do it, then likely I'll do it. And so I want to start out with the first part of the question, like I said, that was asked towards me. Um, where did you get your bold faith and adventurous spirit from? And so I do believe that a lot of you know I'm a Christian. I do think that ultimately God gives everybody a measure of faith. What is a measure of faith? Literally just a portion. And it is up to us if we actually start to exercise that portion. A lot of you do know that God is not a respecter of persons. Just because you wasn't, like in a church your whole life, or you didn't grow up in a church, or maybe you didn't really know about God as you were growing up, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are less special or, less important. So because God knows who you are, it's just up to you. So that's why I said, as far as like a measure, so we're all given like a measure of faith. And so for me, I think because that is something that I began to understand as I was growing up, and there were things that I would find myself drawn to, and some of those things are, traveling. Some of those things are just really like can't do the routine too long where something's just kind of the same and same and same and habit. Sometimes things got to change up. And so sometimes those are just small signs that you have a different level, of boldness because you're willing to try something different or you're willing to speak up about something. I wasn't always, comfortable about speaking up about certain topics as I grew up, but I did recognize, especially based on like what my mother and others have said, that I was one of those people that was kind of categorized as the outspoken one, not really afraid to speak about something. So over time, that kind of built up, and I think it's a really great question to ask about. Where does boldness and faith come from? And so, like I said, I believe that it comes from a measure of faith that God gives us, but you still have to hone in on that. You still have to awaken that, or it still has to be stirred up some form, shape, or fashion. And I do believe, like by life experience, and when sometimes I feel like people have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. So after a while, sometimes when you find that the stagnation is present in your life, there is a form of boldness that comes sometimes out of frustration. So I do believe like a form of me being bold in some ways were really kind of born out of frustration because after a while, like I said, you get frustrated with something that's stagnant, something that's not moving. And it also kind of helps too when not only you might be that type of person, but when you start to get surrounded by other people who have like minded values, those who may, think that way. I'll be honest with a lot of people out there from a transparent perspective. I don't really find a whole bunch of like, bold people on an everyday basis because I see that there are a lot of people who struggle with that. And that's why I wanted to do this video today because, it's not a competition. It's not a race about like, oh, who's going to be the most bold or who's most boldest or who's going to be the most this or that. But really, do you take a chance to really tap into what did God give you individually? What did God give you personally? That is something that I'm very pro, just pro. I'm just pro identity, where it's like if you can really tap into who you are from a very individual perspective, you're going to see that you have an equal measure, just like anyone else. There is no one that is, quote, better than you. There is no one that's under you in God's eyes. But what is it that He has especially for you? And I do believe that when you start to get to know more about yourself, because when you become bolder, it's a part of just growing in general from when you're a child to an adult. Some people may not experience a certain phase of faith until they get a little older because there are more responsibilities. There's more real life examples that you'll probably like, come across that causes you to stand up and be bold about things, or it causes you to be more faithful towards having faith in something. Because when you see, especially when things are looking, kind of grim, like let's say like today's world, there's a lot going on and it causes people to really sometimes wonder like what's next and stuff like that. And so sometimes faith, where you're believing even though you may not see something at that given moment, you have to believe regardless, sometimes regardless of what's going on in the world. And so I believe that um, as I was growing up, especially when you're the kind of person that wants more in life, you look around and say there's got to be more. And that's where faith starts. It's got to be more. It's got to be more than just the normalcy of going to a 9 to 5 and just paying bills, or just even after that you hang out with your friends. I mean, those things are nice to some extent, but there's got to be more to life. And so that's how I believe the origin of my boldness have come from, my faith. And then the last part is the adventurous spirit. I just believe that that's just me naturally. And um and because it's been a natural part of me, as I was growing up, I once again started running into sometimes the opposite. Not everybody's necessarily adventurous. And so, one thing that I had to really decide, and I think that we have to decide this on a regular basis, is that when you see that there's opposition to sometimes what you naturally are, sometimes you still have to just say, nevertheless, you're going to live as God has called you to be. And I believe that a part of me, just kind of being adventurous and being very quick to leave, if I have to, that is because I am called to do certain things that require a certain level of adventure. Because if I'm not open to where God wants me to be or what I should do, then it's going to cause a lot of hindrance. It's going to cause me to be a little stubborn. It's going to cause me to kind of sit in just one place, that type of thing. And so and I also want to emphasize when I say like leave at any given moment, I'm not talking about like just leaving situations just because, but more so, like I said, if it has to do with like my life. So leaving New York, and I think I've told this to quite a few people, but I think I want to share the story more often because I think it is probably a center or a central topic that I'll begin to speak on from time to time in different places. Is that leaving New York helped me to grow spiritually. That was my main reason. If I can look back, because every year when you're away from something old, usually there's a new revelation or some type of recognition. You're like, oh, I recognize this now. So now, guys, you saw that replay. Like I said, it was a replay on Thursday, so I wasn't overlooking anybody's comments. But on Thursday, I had said, oh, it's my seventh year in Chicago, but actually now it's my eighth year because that was recorded last year. So, but this is my eighth year being away from all that I've ever known, all from away from my hometown, away from my family, just different aspects of life that I left. And so each year there's always some attached extra, revelation, so to speak. And I believe that if I wasn't adventurous in that moment to leave, then I wouldn't be where I am today as far as my mentality, as far as my boldness, as far as so many people that I have been able to bless, or somebody was a blessing to me in this region, or even in other regions. It's amazing how I moved out of my region, but then I met a lot of people outside of where I am now because of just being obedient to get out of where I knew. And so sometimes when you look back, and some people may not be happy with it, you got to look at to see, well, look what the Lord has done. Look where He's brought you from. And so I wanted to come on and really share that with someone else because one thing that I have found out, especially being here in the Midwest, has nothing to do with the culture of the Midwest. It just happens, like I said, just to be out of an old place and just getting a chance to kind of renew your mind and see things from a different perspective is that when you start to really solidify your identity, it doesn't matter what people think. And I know people say, oh, I keep hearing that from other people, but you got to really mean it for yourself. Do you really care about the labels and the limitations that people try to put on people? There's so much talk about what people should do and what they shouldn't do. But one thing I have learned out here is that I'm so content, where I am and who I am. And there's so much more to come. And I want to be able to continue to influence people to know that for themselves because no two people are the same. And no two experiences are going to be exactly the same either. So when you can embrace your own experience and your own levels of like what boldness looks like to you or what it means to really just kind of keep faith, I think that really counts for something. And the other part of the question was like, was it always there? Or did it develop as you grow as far as like boldness, having faith? And then, as I mentioned, it's literally because as I grew, things changed. But I also noticed that as you grow, if you're not taking the time to actually learn during the stages of growth, you're just going to keep growing. And it's fine to grow, but if you're growing without actually understanding why are you growing or what did you learn through certain phases of the growth, then I feel like it just kind of, negates the purpose of growth because we should be learning from that. So I do believe that over time, that through different experiences, through kind of, like I said, just surrounding myself with like-minded people, or just people that are stronger in certain areas than I am, it helps me to come up higher. And so I believe that, especially like right now, my goal is to even find more people that are much better off than I am so I can learn from them and vice versa. There's things that we can all kind of like share with one another. So I do believe like just being able to develop boldness and faith and even, just being adventurous. Some people, when they think about the term adventurous, they think, oh, somebody has to be an extrovert to do that. And I have told people I am an extrovert by nature, but even those who might be introverted, when the time is right and when it's time to do something, you have to believe. You have to believe first. Believe that God has given you an ability to be adventurous when it's time to. And when there's times when it's just like, okay, you gotta, shut the people down or out or whatever, because you need that time, you do that. But like that's why I said ultimately you have to know who you are, embrace who you are, and do things according to how he has kind of like, made a unique path for you. So I really hope that somebody gets encouraged by that. And then the last part of the question was, and then we're about to wrap up and whatnot. And like I said, I'll leave this as a replay for someone to listen to, because I know I do get your messages here and there about how you're influenced by some of the things I have to share, because I know that real life experiences should be shared. And I genuinely want to see people win, because if we all win, then it's a great thing. So the last part of the question was, and how much of a role did your mother in New York play in it? As far as like, having boldness, faith, and adventurous spirit. So I actually really do want to address that last part, because I'm going to start with I'll start with my mom. So the role of my mother did play a part to some extent as far as like boldness, um, and in adventure. But I want to say that my mom played a major part when it comes to faith more than the other two. And the reason why is because my mother is, and always and was very influential, where she, taught me how to generate faith, but faith on a personal note with God. It wasn't forced. And I'm so thankful for that. Like she didn't force me to, be religious. She didn't force me to just do things just because, but and I also saw her example. So that's another thing too. So we, at one point we were very, very traditional in a sense where, we're going to church every Sunday, we're going to Bible study, and those things are still happening to some extent, but there's a difference now, present day, because we've recognized that it's okay to, like, if you're going to do stuff from a traditional perspective, but you're not learning, you're just sitting there, you're not really growing, then what does it serve? And so that's something that I, kind of grew up, understanding over time. But back to why I said she was, such a huge impact when it comes to my faith, is because, like I said, she never forced me. And she always, says to me that that relationship is personal between you and God. And then, of course, when you get like, like a teenager, you're really like held accountable for the things that you do. Like your parent cannot be there to just say, oh, okay, well, I'll just confess your sins or this on your behalf. So you got to do this yourself. So that my mother just being a very positive um, mother. I'm not trying to throw shade on people's mothers back in the day or nothing like that, but it's just that when I look at some of my surroundings at the time compared to the kind of upbringing that my mother, definitely placed in the home, it made a big difference and it helped me to make better decisions as I grew up. So yes, so her influence is heavily on my faith. But when it comes to like the adventurous part and the boldness, I would say very, very, very minor influence was my mother with the boldness, because she did say that, oh, to speak up and to always, appreciate who you are. But the boldness developed as I got older. And so that was something that I purposely, sought out on my own over time. And that's how that boldness came about. The adventurous part, and got to come back to the boldness real quick, and maybe even the faith, but adventure and boldness, right? That definitely New York, I could say, played basically like a 90% role in that, because those of you who are born and raised in New York City, and a lot of people on the outside even know the saying is that if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And I believe that's so true, because it's just such a unique kind of culture, and it's just a unique um, it's just a unique setup the way things are, where it's like you're gonna have to make it out there. You going, the saying, you always gotta like find a way to do something. And so I think that just kind of having that kind of background and upbringing from a place as such is forever instilled in me. No matter where I go, it's always there. and it does kind of encourages you to be adventurous, because there are things where, it's a city that is of adventure. It's a city that you can experience a lot, and it's such a beautiful melting pot. And that beautiful melting pot has a lot to do with like different cultures and stuff like that. So you're kind of surrounded by so much going on, so many different dynamics, that it's only a limited amount of time where you sort of develop a certain kind of boldness, or develop a certain type of mindset of adventure. So I think that that was a major role when it comes to, like I said, the idea of being like adventurous and bold. So I just wanted to come on and just kind of share those personal perspectives, because it was a question that was posed to me. And I really do that hope that a lot of you out there who are listening, that you can be encouraged to be bold and to be adventurous in the ways that are, needed. Like I said, not just being bold and just, being loose and just, just ridiculous with your actions and reckless. No, but even in that, when it comes to boldness and being adventurous, there's still kind of like a calculation of being strategic. Because if you're just bold and, like I said, just doing whatever, and you have no structure with that, then, especially if you're the type of person that have certain vices with certain things that you might get into that you shouldn't be getting into, then you probably want to learn how to keep, what I'm saying, the adventure, like I said, in a certain kind of, bracket, if that makes sense. So I will leave this video up. I thank you for just taking a moment to listen, and I really hope that all of you have an excellent day, night, afternoon, no matter where you are. And I will date this video. Today is May 20th, 2023, so this is live. I actually am live, and I will be back on Thursday. And I really want to also say that if you want to join my email list, I'm going to actually put in the comments here. Please feel free to join. All I do is really send out one email on Sundays so that you could begin your week with inspiration. And that's all it is. And so I want to also just give a personal shout out to those who have been faithfully on my email list for like the last, I want to say, maybe like 4 years. I think I've been consistent for 4 years. I started it like back like 10 years ago, and I was sending emails here and there, but I've been very consistent for the last 4 years, literally every Sunday. And so I just want to thank all of you that have taken a moment to read it. Those of you who have given me feedback via email and just different forms of messages and stuff like that. So this is Cesare, aka the Pretty Producer, aka the Singing Scholar. And once again, just thank you so much for your support. Thank you for just taking a listen. And I do hope that you will become bold and you will be adventurous and you will keep the faith, okay?